Hello everyone, this is Pigsy. In today's video I'm going to show you what you could think of as a kind of tech or art demo of Castlevania 3 running on the Sega Genesis / Mega Drive. Regular viewers of the channel will know I'm currently working on two games, Mega Drive versions of Castlevania Symphony of the Night and GG Shinobi. I released an update video on the latter just last week, and in that video I mentioned that most of my time developing the game this year has been spent on the pixel art, just redrawing it so I can take the graphical assets which were meant for an 8-bit Game Gear game and upgrade them so it looks more like a 16-bit Mega Drive game. Being someone new to pixel art, of course that involves redrawing things over and over again until you improve your skills, and I've done that a lot with the GG Shinobi game this year. However, after a while you kind of get bored looking at the same graphics over and over again and redoing them over and over again, so I wanted to get more opportunities for practice bringing 8-bit graphical assets to a 16-bit system, so I started to think what other games, 8-bit games, I could just for pixel art practice just redraw for the Mega Drive. And of course the fact that I'm working on a Castlevania game at the moment, Symphony of the Night, meant that Castlevania is really in my mind, so I thought why not do this to Castlevania 3. Apart from being able to get more pixel art practice for the purpose of making the graphics on GG Shinobi better, this little mini side project also presented the opportunity to do some things that we're going to need to do in Symphony of the Night in the future anyway. So for example, in that game there is a boss fight where you have some of the characters from the Castlevania 3 game. So doing this Castlevania 3 for the Mega Drive gave me a chance to jump ahead and start doing programming in the animations for some of those characters. Trevor Belmont in this case. While I could have just used the original sprite from the NES game and added more colour, I think the larger size Trevor Belmont from Symphony of the Night is more suitable for a 16-bit game anyway. And you can see my Symphony of the Night version of Trevor Belmont here. Now in the Symphony of the Night game he was a zombie, so I had to change the colour to make him look a bit more healthy, but I think most of the animations are in is looking pretty good. When it comes to do the boss fight for Symphony of the Night featuring the zombie Trevor, I'll definitely make some changes, but all in all, I think the walking, jumping and attacking is looking pretty good. Anyone who saw last week's GG Shinobi update video will recall that I mentioned that for that game I had to double the size both vertically and horizontally, so pretty much quadrupling the size of all the assets in the game. That has the effect of making them look extra pixelated, but if I didn't do that then the assets would just look too small for a Mega Drive game. The solution to that problem for GG Shinobi was of course to keep adding lots of new detail and redrawing everything so it looks nice in the new higher resolution. For Castlevania 3, fortunately this isn't necessary as most of the level assets are fine the size they are, I just need to add more colour and detail. There's only some exceptions, so for example the green statues looked a bit squat in the original with the new Trevor sprite, so I had to redraw them in a much bigger size. For me now, putting the assets into the game is pretty easy. I just use a modified version of what I'm using, the engine I'm using for Symphony of the Night. After putting them into the game, I thought about maybe adding, the stairs physics and other things too, but then it's the scope of the project starts to expand from what should be a very simple kind of pixel art project and a project to practice some animations, and it'll become a fully fledged kind of remake, and I didn't want to get that deep into it right now, so that's why I've got very basic physics and collision. It's more just art and tech demo. For some areas like this you can see that some of the background graphics I haven't really converted them into the Mega Drive, they're just using the NES originals, but I have added the parallax scrolling of course, which is very easy to do for a 16-bit system. The next two screens are a bit more impressive. These ones are fully converted to the Mega Drive and I wanted to try a few neat scrolling tricks out here. Because all the little individual level sections in Castlevania 3 are very small, it gives you the opportunity to use tile scrolling on both planes, so the foreground and the background, and to change the priority and add sprites and to create this kind of 4-layer scrolling effect. The original 8-bit version of course looks a lot more flat because doing that kind of parallax scrolling on the NES or the Master System is pretty difficult. And when it comes to the added colour and detail, I was actually really happy with this particular scene. I thought it worked out quite well. For a newbie pixel artist like myself at least, I was quite happy with it. I took that idea of the multi-scrolling backgrounds even further in the next screen. As a reminder, this is what the NES original looks like. As expected for an 8-bit game, it doesn't have any parallax scrolling. In a 16-bit version, parallax scrolling is very much expected of course, and I've added it here. I'm sure most of you watching are already aware that the Mega Drive only has 2 layers of background, so normally you only have 1 layer of parallax. However, here I did some experimentation. I managed to do it so that through a combination of tile scrolling both on the foreground and background, changing the priorities of those tiles and also adding a few sprites in between, I've managed to get this 3 or 4 layer background scrolling going. The best use of this technique that I'm aware of is Thunder Force 4. Here they usually use tile scrolling on both background layers but switch their priorities so that one can appear in front of the other at different times. If we take a look at the debug screen from our Castlevania 3 game, you'll see this in action. So the pink represents the sprites on the screen and the red and the green are the 2 background layers. You can see how in different parts of the screen either the green or the red background layer will appear in front of the other. That's me switching priorities of those tiles. Plus the different elements of the 2 backgrounds are moving at different speeds too. And for those areas where there's too much crossover, I use the pink sprites to fill in. I think there might be 1 or 2 areas in the Symphony of the Night castle where I can use this technique as well, so it's really good to be able to test the proof of concept here. Another little programming thing I wanted to experiment with in this little side project is the HUD. You may recall that from my Symphony of the Night HUD I'm using sprites to make up, but you can actually use one of the background layers too. This is known as the window plane. How it works is you want to tell the Mega Drive that you want to use the window plane, so it reserves a part of one of the background layers and it makes sure that it doesn't scroll with the rest of the screen. I would actually say that most 8-bit and 16-bit games use this way of displaying the HUD rather than sprites. You saw it in Thunder Force 4 earlier, Streets of Rage here uses it, and of course Castlevania does too. In between my constant yapping in this video, you may have noticed some great music playing in the background, and that's because despite this being a very small project, I've been lucky enough to have the help of a great chiptune artist. I think most people who've been following the Mega Drive scene in recent years know who Cyberdeus is. Even if you don't recognise their name, I'm sure you'll recognise the music. In the past couple of years, they've been on a real tear doing music for games such as Mega R-Type, Mega Splatterhouse, as well as eagerly awaited new games such as the shooter Lufterhate. I will leave a link to their channel in the video description, so be sure to check it out. Okay, as I close off the video, I'll just leave you with some of these screens from other areas of the game that I've already done the graphics for, because after all, as I said at the very start of the video, this was originally just intended to be pixel art practice for my GG Shinobi game. So there are lots of graphics that I've done that I've not necessarily put into the game. I think drawing pixel art is one of those things you have to just practice, and for anyone who wants to get into pixel art, I'll really recommend taking the some 8-bit games that you like and trying to convert them to the Mega Drive. I think it's really good practice. I think it's really helped me with my pixel art and use of colour, and also of course the work I've done this year on Area of Sorrow, trying to reduce the colours from a much higher colour environment to the Mega Drive has also been very useful. I'm getting more and more confident when it comes to drawing backgrounds, and I think next year, 2025, I really want to focus on drawing sprites. You can see here I've already practiced doing some of the enemy sprites in Castlevania 3, just converting them, adding colour, and I need to do lots of these sprites for GG Shinobi too. So hopefully by the end of next year I'll be able to report that my sprites animation work has improved a lot too. Okay, so that's it for this video. Thanks very much for watching. If you're interested in this type of content, don't forget to like and subscribe.
I'm interested in this.
And if you'd like to support the work I do, as well as get sneak previews into what I'm currently working on, then I have a Patreon and any support is much appreciated.
You won't go unrewarded.
Until next time,
farewell.